what is the reason that the Chinese came? The reason Chinese came was not because they had a right over Tibet. They did not come to Tibet because they have any historical or political right. But the communist Chinese used to believe that they're the center of the universe, and gradually the rest of the world must be conquered. So that is their dream. So what they did was at least conquer and bully all the neighboring nations. I am here to primarily appreciate your interest in what has happened in Tibet, because during these border clashes which happened very recently, I am definite that many of you have developed much awareness about what is really happening, and thereby you might have got a little bit knowledge about what has happened in Tibet also. So our Indian brothers and sisters showing interest about Tibetan culture, Tibetan religion, and what has happened, or in other words, what was Tibet like before the Chinese came, and what has happened after the Chinese came. These are, I think, extremely important for you to know, not as a political exercise, but as a fact of matter that will affect the stability of your country, the well-being and peace of your country. To say a few words is like, in my own case, in Tibet itself, I don't really have much experience, but few experiences that I had are all alarming experiences. When Chinese invaded Tibet, I don't even know what my actual age was. In the introduction, Aparna said Geshe-la was born in 1956, which is what I've written there, so she is not wrong. But I'm not sure whether it's exactly 56 or a little few years earlier, maybe a few years earlier, whatever. So anyway, I was a little child, maybe 5, 6 years old, I don't know exactly. But given the vivid memory of few instances that happened during my childhood there when the Chinese invaded, it's clear that I'm grown enough to at least recall some of the things that has happened. So 2, 3 instances which I remember, which always remained in my mind. And then later on, probably because of this influence or trauma on the mind of a child, I used to very often wake up in the night, even when, grown up, much, much later also. So probably you can call that trauma. Although externally speaking, I don't have any symptoms of trauma, suffering from trauma, but the mind always gives an imprint, especially if it is done on the very indelible, impressionable mind of a child. So one I remember was that it was night, say around, I think, 7, 8, something. It was already dark. And I could thinly, almost like veiled, see an old woman coming with a heavy load carrying, and she was whispering something. So the atmosphere, I have no idea what was happened, what she whispered, but the situation was, even as a child, I could feel the grimness. So that also left an impact on my mind. When the Chinese came to Tibet, they came in a very friendly way, and that's the communist Chinese way. And Tibetans used to say that the communist Chinese are the kind parents, and the silver coin is showering down like rainfall. So they used to give silver coins and all those things, which I don't remember, but at least I remember, they were giving the cigarette packets, colorfully printed cigarette packets, So in Tibet, it's a very materially undeveloped country. We don't see those, colorful prints. So as a child, we used to fancy those things, So what they did when they came to our area was they were asking all the men to come to their uh, military barrack and bring all the horses with them. So I remember very clearly that all the men that night, for fear of being caught by Chinese, they all much earlier, they all ran away into the mountain and they hid themselves in the mountain. Except my father, maybe one more, I don't remember, but my father is a very funny man. So he did not join them. He did not join them. And the remaining us, so that the mothers and the ladies and the small kids like me, we all went up. There is a place called Panglung. So we hid ourselves in that cave. And then I remember very well 5 Chinese horsemen, riding on horses. They came and we had also some dogs with us. The dogs started barking and they threw stones. So what I remember very clearly was they don't throw stones like this. They throw stones like, like this. So anyway, they said, why you're hiding here? You need to come down. Of course, there's nothing we can do. So we all went down, settled down in the plain area. My father and our best horses were taken away by the Chinese army. Then in the dark night, all the other men who went into the mountain to hide themselves, they all gradually, came down and rejoined the family. My father, who was taken to the Chinese garrison or barrack, he also came back. So the Chinese took all the good horses, and instead they gave some inferior quality of horses. And when my father was saying, "Oh, they're very nice," they had shown a movie. So normally the movie they show is how great and powerful the Chinese army is. So actually, indirectly, they were like threatening, this is our power. You need to sooner or later you need to command us, things like that. So I don't remember systematically one after another. So this is second thing that I remember. Third thing that I remember was one night we all went up into the top of a mountain, the whole family, with whatever we can take. We went up and hid on the top of a mountain. So at that time, the men, women, everybody was there. Then a message came from the Chinese army that we know some of you are hiding there, so you must come down immediately, otherwise we'll, shoot you or bomb you or things like that. So we all came down in the day, and that very night we escaped. All of us escaped and moved towards India. And on our way, we were crossing, I think, Brahmaputra River. So as a child, I remember, because we were all frightened, especially a child is very frightened. So now by reflecting, I think it is not the fresh light of the chasing army, but it is reflection of the stars in the Brahmaputra River. So I used to think it's the torch or flashlight of the chasing Chinese army. So whatever be the case, I had that impression. And when we came, many number of our people had at least some, short guns, rifles and short guns. Not much, a little bit. So I remember when we reached in the Indian border, then we were not allowed to take all those. So we hid all of them in somewhere in the mountain. So anyway, that place I don't remember. So that is my memory. That's my memory. And so much, even much as I said, even much later, I used to dream of being chased by Chinese armies, and sometimes I also have a rifle and shooting bag and all those kind of dreams. So not much now, but sometimes it comes. So that's the thing. So now, if you read just that part of the story, like my family is relatively not very rich, but relatively belong to the richer family. We are nomadic. We are nomads. So the rich means having lots of cattle and yaks and things like that. Not having cars, or Tibet itself doesn't have those things at that time. So we had all those things. So just like a dream, we had to leave everything behind. And another very interesting thing that again took place when we left everything behind and when we escaped, again my father, stubborn man, my father and another uh, my uncle, they said, how can we go, leaving all this cattle, which is our wealth, we'll try to bring some of them. So they remained behind. So we were worried, but we all proceeded. But then the good thing is, of course, they were unable to bring all those horses, which is impossible. But my father managed to bring a very special text, which is said to be discovered from hidden treasure. We call it Pema Kathang, which is very special, the 5 volume by Guru Pema Sambhava. It's a very auspicious sign. And even in Tibet, I studied my Tibetan alphabet from that text. So that text is almost like a historical text. And then also the many great miraculous deeds done by Guru Pema Sambhava, things like that. So it's not a Kaka Ganga, alphabet teaching text, but it's a major religious text. But my uncle, one of my uncle who was more literate, he taught how to read Kaka Ganga to maybe 7, 8, small kids in a little cave in Tibet. So I always make this connection, very interesting connection. I studied my alphabet from there. Then my father, who stubbornly, stayed behind, was somehow able to bring this text, which is still there now in my home in Tibetan settlement in Orissa. And recently I brought it to my institute library and made scanned all of the book. So then almost every year I make it sure that I read this text, which is like more than 300 pages, a very interesting text. So some of the lines also I know by heart. I've read it so much. So that is actually a good thing, a very special karmic sign. So anyway, even you take the example of our scale, which was probably a little bit easier in those days than later on. And then later on, of course, many people just were killed on the road. So today it's a common thing for people to say over 1.2 million Tibetans were died or killed, you see, by the Chinese invasion, out of the 6 million, imagine. Now, what is the reason that the Chinese came? The reason Chinese came was not because they had a right over Tibet. They did not come to Tibet because they have any historical or political right. But the communist Chinese used to believe that they're the center of the universe, and gradually the rest of the world must be conquered. So that is their dream. So what they did was at least conquer and bully all the neighboring nations. So it's only because of that. Then, of course, they have to have a pretext. And the pretext is, they say at one point, the Mongols, controlled Tibet for some time. Okay? Because of this, they say. And then sometimes very stupidly they say because one of the Chinese prince was married to the Tibetan king Sungsun Gampo. So I'm telling you one thing. These are two small examples. I can almost say the communist Chinese and the communist leaders hardly believe in truth. That is one thing that I really want you to remember. Because very often I see, for the purpose of doing some business and for some monetary gain, on and off, I see many countries getting entrapped and fueled by the sweet talk. The sweet talk. Now look at this road and belt policy which they are following right now. Current example, which luckily or unluckily now they are not so successful because of the pandemic, which is their own doing. But they were all saying, oh, we are here to help you. If you do construct this road, construct this bridge, and then you can do. You can. Nepal is your neighbor, and you've seen that what they were doing there. Now take the example during this pandemic. Now Nepal is suffering. Where are the China? Where are the Chinese government? That is China. There's China. I try my best not to have ill will, because ill will is neither good for them nor good for us, which is, the guidance we saw in this dilemma. I'm not saying that, but I must, at the same time, I must have the courage to speak the fact, to tell the truth. So of course, you have every right to judge for yourself, but based on my experience, based on the experience of the Tibetans, the communist Chinese leaders can never be trusted, never be trusted. Their constitution means nothing. Just to give you an example, for example, they are supposed to be following the communist system. Okay, supposed to be following. According to one of the primary thing that the communist system says is, they do to bring peace and harmony in societies, what Karl Marx and others said, the class struggle. Class struggle basically means support the minority. If there is a clash between the minority and majority, they say we will be there to support the minority. Now look at the situation of the minority ethnic groups in China today. Look at Tibet. Tibet is today said to be one of the worst country where human right violation is taking place. Some people say worse than North Korea. Because hardly any people know anything. Look at what is what is happening in Xinjiang right now. And how many countries are voicing against that. But they don't give a damn. Unless other countries also really, flex their muscle and show toughness, they will never listen. I'll give you an example. For example, when Obama tried to be a little bit in close contact with China, then after they started completely ignoring about Tibet, you see. Instead of making the situation better, the more you little bit become lenient and to them, the more they will, that's their strategy. To convince this point, I'll tell you this recent happening in the border. At least this time, India showed their bravery and as much as possible, challenge them, for them. Right? So that's why they settled a little bit down. And that's their tactic. But don't think they have settled completely. Now the latest figure coming out from Tibet is hundreds and thousands of Tibetans are recruited in the army to be sent especially to the border area, Indian border area, because they suffered this defeat from the Indian military in general, and especially some of the Tibetan armies. So now they want to send the Tibetans. They are doing all these nasty things. It's really alarming. You must read that, what they are doing. And they are putting new barracks and also doing a lot of constructions so that the army can stay there irrespective of whatever the weather is. They are planning, they are working. And they are dangerous. They are dangerous because in a democratic country, we can't just force people to do things in one night, you see, but they can do. I'm not saying that what they are doing will be good for them. That definitely, it's only a matter of time. I always say what the Chinese doing is really digging their own grave. जो भी बुरा काम करता है उसका नतीजा बुरा ही होता है. It's only question of time. I believe this. Right? But they are such a bully. Have no sense of human, integrity, no sense of human dignity, doesn't listen. That's why His Holiness the Dalai Lama, in very simple language, he says, the problem with the Chinese leaders is that they have mouth and no ear. They have mouth. So this is a really wonderful summary, we have sent like many fact-finding missions, and then later on special envoys. And so what they do is, The Chinese leaders, they give long, unending talks. And after that, when it is the time for the Tibetan, representatives to say something, then they will hardly allow them to say anything. Then, say, oh, it's time for lunch. Let us go to the movie. They just use their power. And that's why Mao Zedong said political power grows out of the barrel of the gun. Mao Zedong said it, and people, they are believing in it. So what they are doing is concentrating only on improving weapons to destroy, kill other people, including this virus, which is a biological kind of warfare. Believe me, I'm not a scientist, but I can sense that this is actually they have manufactured it in their laboratory to destroy the rest of the world, to belittle democracy. Right? So that is China. That's China. And recently it came out in the newspaper that, two countries lighted a fire at the same time. One lighted one did the lighting to send the rocket up in the space, another lighting dead bodies. Can you imagine? That's their human decency. And that came out in a kind of media related to the government. I'm not trying to, feel enmity with China. We must make a distinction between the Chinese leaders and the Chinese people. We still believe that Chinese people are like you and me, wanting happiness, not wanting suffering. But the Chinese people, imagine, they really, the only thing they can do now is they can eat, of course, they can eat food, they go to theater, sing songs, do this, all the mundane, not so useless, not so useful activities, all this they can do, go to the bar and all those things. But the moment, whether you're a religious organization, a political organization, any other organization, the moment, you don't have to say anything. The moment you become a powerful businessman, so many examples are there, or powerful even singer, a powerful organization, religious, whatever, the moment you become a little bit big, they feel threatened. There is the sense of instability that they have because of their own doing. So right now, the only course left for them is to, by all means, silence everybody. Now in Tibet, just this month, a month before, I think, they said we should not study Tibetan language. So minority languages are now discouraged. And they say it is unconstitutional. Imagine. Not only it is constitutional, but in the UN charters, it is clearly written that all the local languages and dialects must be promoted, but they don't pay any attention to human right. And they've been saying the concept of human right is a Western concept. So what is the Chinese concept of human right? Really unthinkable. But unfortunately, still there are many countries whose leaders are so short-sighted and so stupid that they are more or less bought by the Chinese money. And they are selling everything. So I really appreciate, at least in this case, India did not join the road and belt policy. And we need to be strong. It's probably the only country, neighboring country, which can challenge China. And many are looking, expecting India to stand tall. I really hope. And it is for our own goodness. For our own goodness. I'm saying for our own goodness, because when Tibet was independent country, can you believe? When Tibet was independent country, the border between India and Tibet, there's not even a single soldier to man the border. There was so much peace and harmony. I'm not making it. It's in the historical record. Now today, you see, even in terms of difficulties for the soldiers, even in terms of the money, year in and year out, whether it's summer or winter or whatever, how many thousands of soldiers have to man the border because Tibet was lost. Because when Tibet was facing Chinese threat, countries all around the world, at that time, especially India, because India knows much better than anyone else, could not support what was happening in Tibet. All this, I'm not just making it up. You read history and the blunder, that is being made. So now we have what we call as India-China border, which is not true, but whether you say it true or not, but that's the fact. Chinese are there. So you have such unfortunate, ugly neighbor with such short-sighted leader who makes himself a leader who can never be challenged. I call it the last desperate attempt. Because if he relaxes his, power a little bit, then the upheaval that I'm talking about that has happened in Tibet will happen there. I mean, imagine what they're doing right now, what they're doing in Hong Kong. It's coming out every day, almost every day. Silence everybody, teachers, students, democratic, fighters, everybody where they have a little bit suspicion, they are caught, imprisoned. There's China. There's China. So therefore, while it is important to see what has happened in Tibet, but it is even more important what will happen to India. If you look at the border situation, Aksai Chin, much of it has already been taken by Chinese. And they're so kind of, as I said, because this is one, running under dictatorial system, nobody can question. So they do it. So therefore they're able to construct road very quickly, airports very quickly. Now recently, right now, they're building these big dams. One of the dam they're building is said to be the biggest dam they're going to build. And many other, smaller dams also. So that means changing the course of all the rivers that flow into, India and many Asian countries. I mean, look at their strategy, their meanness. They want to suffocate people, destroy people. During this pandemic, when very often we hear about this lockdown because of the virus, I cannot help but to think that the Chinese virus is there in Tibet since 1959. Tibet was virtually under lockdown since then. Can you imagine how much Tibetans are suffering now? And then in the monasteries, monks cannot join properly. There is an age limit, who to join, who not to join. Now in the name of so-called Sinicization. Sinicization means whichever religion you follow, the religious people must study the communist ideology, the Chinese ideology. So they are gradually trying to replace religion with their stupid ideology. So there's their strategy, increasing the communist members and indoctrinating that ideology to replace all other ideologies, because all other ideologies are a threat to them. That is China. I used to think that when, I'm not talking about now, but before, when, Burma was under military rule and people were criticizing, thinking, I used to say that yes, that is very dangerous, very unfortunate, but that is more or less limited to a small country. Its influence and effect to other countries is not much. China is not like that. The unfortunate things that they're planning is complete madness. Complete madness. And for a sane person with sanity, I really can't figure out what China wants. I mean, so stupid and short-sighted. So their only aim is to become the most powerful country. So what? What will they do there? So it is because of arrogance, and also because of the population, and because of one party political system. Everybody has to do that. And then plus the population. Their influence is big. And this very negative way of ruling the country is now unfortunately imitated by some small countries also. I don't have to count the name, but you can see it. Many people are now following their Chinese system and bullying their people. It's a very dangerous trend, very dangerous trend. So therefore, I mean, that all that is based on ignorance. So therefore, it is very important, I think, for us Indians to get enlightened on this. Then, of course, what has happened to Tibet not only directly concerns in terms of the geographical area and things like that, but also in terms of spiritual connection. Unlike many other countries, I'm not saying this because now we are living in Tibet, but unlike many relationships, which sometimes may be economical, sometimes may be political, but the relation between India and Tibet is a spiritual connection of not 10 years or 20 years, thousands of years. So what Tibetans preserved, what Tibetans managed to preserve when they were in a free country in Tibet was preserve all the Buddhist traditions which came from India. All these great, highly, intelligent and great Indians like Nagarjuna, many came from South India and from all parts of India. The names which you may not know, but Nagarjuna, Chandrakirti, Shanti Deva, Bhava Viveka, there are hundreds of Indians, Atisha, Kamalashila, Shantarakshita. They were like stalwarts. I'm not just saying it. I read their text and studied it. Imagine their brilliance, their wisdom, their knowledge, and then not only scholarship, but the moral ethics. So therefore, I seize this opportunity for our, Indian brothers and sisters, especially the younger generation, to study those great Indian teachers' books, many of which are luckily these days available in English also, a little bit in Hindi also, a little bit in other languages also, maybe Gujarati also a little bit, and Bengali also a little bit, not much, but in English, much of this is available. Just wisdom. And I used to tease my Indian friends that Buddha was not a Tibetan, but Indian. I tease that because Tibetans managed to preserve all that Indian culture and heritage. Today, just few days back, I received a request to do an interview for a group in Europe. So they were doing a documentary to find out why Buddhism has become the fastest growing religion in Europe today. So we need to know this, you see. This is Tibetan tradition. This is Indian tradition. We must preserve this. And Tibetans managed to preserve this. Not only managed to preserve this, but luckily, even after we lost our country, luckily many of highly qualified elder Tibetan monks managed to escape. Highly qualified, religious leaders were able to escape, and they started all the monasteries. And in the initial stage, after coming into India, there was like 30, 40 SS Aparna introduced, in the introduction, that to become a geshe, you take at least 15, 20 years. So now we have this elderly Tibetan scholars who escaped from Tibet, and then this novices you need to teach from ABCD. So that there was like almost like 20 years gap. And the worry of His Holiness Dalai Lama and many Tibetan elders was, how can we now bridge the gap? Will it be possible? Will the younger generation be able to imbibe all the great wisdom and the transmission? We are really happy to say that today we have not only bridged that gap since many years, now we have many scholars. So we managed to preserve it in Tibet, managed to bring it in, in India. So in those days, when Tibetans used to study Buddhism, they used to come on foot, and it used to take several months to reach India. And they used to bring gold to offer to the Indian gurus. And because of this, people knew that when the Tibetan monks are coming, they will be coming with gold. So many of them were robbed and killed on the road. Many did not make it. Many died because of the climatic change, coming from a very cold climate to a very hot climate. But they suffered all these tribulations and managed not only to study and become great scholars, but also managed to invite hundreds of Indian scholars to Tibet. Right? So now, because it is again available in India, there are now, in the past, there was not much interest. Now, recently, more and more Indian, especially younger generation, is showing interest, which is really, really important. Because what can make India really proud is a good Indian cultural heritage, not just Buddhism, but the perennial cultural heritage, the religions of dialogue, they call it, like Sanatan Dharma. You see? Because if you look at the actual Indian tradition, then you have this great tradition of studying about human psychology, how to remove these destructive emotions, how to cultivate the positive emotions, then also, how to ask questions. Therefore, in this Indian tradition, ancient Indian traditions are called dialogue religions. That it is not that Guruji just keeps on teaching and the student cannot ask any question. It's not like that. There are traditions which is like that, you see. So this is a richness and greatness of Indian tradition, that you can always ask question. If it is not so sure, you don't have to believe. That's what the Buddha taught. And we had with His Holiness's initiative, we had held several 5 days lasting dialogue between some of the top scientists from different countries, especially America and other countries, and His Holiness and the Tibetan masters. We did serious dialogue of that kind, I think nearly 30 times. And all these scientists were like just amazed with the profundity and vastness of the Indian tradition, the Buddhist tradition, you see. So that's why these days, His Holiness is urging repeatedly our younger Indian generation to study the perennial ancient Indian tradition, especially the art of logic and the function of human mind. And His Holiness repeatedly said, it's only India which can make this ancient Indian study go together with science. Yes, we need science, we need technology, we need all the material developments, but what we are gradually missing is good heart, ethics, morality. Even during this pandemic problem, there are many people, unfortunately, who are making business out of it, who are black marketing. Just an hour before, I saw somebody, buying from China some of these gas cylinders for around 12,000 something, and then selling it for 50,000, 60,000. Black marketing. Unbelievable. Because if you don't have this human compassion, human love, the country cannot prosper. Of course, it is not just bad things. There are many, many amazing people in India who are doing so many amazing things also. So we need to strengthen that much more. So as I right in the beginning said, I'm not an expert on all this political intrigues and complexities and things like that. Because my focus is more on the religious side, but it's not that hard to study if I show an interest in that. But my sincere focus is, when I became the director of the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives, as suggested by His Holiness Dalai Lama, just after I think 1 year or 2 years, I started a small project, and I named that project Repaying the Kindness Project. Repaying the Kindness Project means repaying the kindness to whom? To India. And what is that project? I have no money to give. So the project is translating the Buddha's teachings and His Holiness teachings into Hindi. That was the only thing I can do. And I hope if more people, then we can get it translated into Gujarati and, So the younger generation really need this heart, good heart, compassion, integrity, discipline, being nice and helping each other. That's the most important thing in human life. If you don't have that, whatever you have, you can see clearly what is happening during the pandemic and the death. The only thing that will help nourish and sustain the country or the society or the individual is these good qualities, which we must study. So I want to say that I really want to say. And I have been also teaching many, many younger Indians. Whether they become Buddhist or not, that's not my business. I'm not interested in increasing the Buddhist population. That's not my business. Even Buddha could not do that. So why should I make an attempt to that? Even Jesus could not make everybody Christian. so that is not my concern. The concern is honestly and sincerely, you want everybody happy. Everybody happy. And therefore, I have a special affinity to my Tibetan brothers and sisters and to my Indian brothers and sisters who have been so kind to me. So I always encourage them to be a good person, sincere person, honest person, help each other, study, gain knowledge, which is important. But the knowledge means head, wisdom. And head without heart is one-sided. If you are very overly smart, intelligent, you know many things, you even know how to make a nuclear bomb. But if you don't have heart, then you use this nuclear bomb to throw on the head of millions. That's what is happening in the world today. It is this stupid way of just running after material accumulation that world is destroying itself. Environmental destruction and all these pandemics are, to make a long story short, doing of human beings. Right? So therefore, we need to realize that India has a very, very rich, sophisticated tradition. But now I unfortunately don't see, maybe I don't see, India is big, so because of that, it may be happening in many places. But at least for me, something that I'm concerned and was also wondering whether it's happening or not is teach some of this ancient Indian tradition, the useful philosophical tradition, not the ritual. और मंत्र पढ़ना, जप करना, दूसरों को किसी को सेवा नहीं करना, वो फालतू है, नहीं चलेगा वो. Whether it's a Buddhist ritual or Indian ritual, doesn't matter. If you want to do okay. We have right to do whatever we want, so long as it doesn't harm other people. So I can't stop ritual. I'm not saying that. But if you really want something that's effective, that change the society, that help each other, then mantra पढ़ के नहीं होता है वो. मंत्र पढ़ के ये pandemic खत्म हो जाए, नहीं होता है. You can pray, sometimes you pray because that will solace your mind a little bit, but a real solution doesn't come from there. The real solution comes with human hand, with human heart. So there's this, I'm just hinting, there's, I'm trying to give you a little bit temptation, how much is there in Buddhism. Really, there's so much. I spent my whole life, I can say, right? It can go very, 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 not only go well with science, but much more than science. Science is only talking about what is measurable. And all those material objects and measurable things, they are all controlled by human mind. जबकि वो दिमाग ही ठीक नहीं है, फिर तो क्या करेंगे मटेरियल? जो आदमी जिसका दिमाग ठीक नहीं है, उसके हाथ में हथियार होने से फिर क्या होता है, हम सबको पता है. So the most important thing is, I mean, if you use the word civilization, culture, these are all related. Civilized human being means, cultured human being means somebody whose mind is cultured, whose mind is civilized. So therefore, when we talk about Tibet, His Holiness even went to the extent of saying that let us not to talk about past. Leave the past to the historians, because Chinese are repeatedly saying Tibet is part of China. But I want to tell you one thing. The fact that Tibet is not part of China is because they are repeatedly saying it. Tibet is part of China, Tibet is part of China, Tibet is part of China. That's Chinese government's mantra. Because it is not, therefore they have to repeat it like mantra, number one. Number two, the fact that Tibet does not belong to China is that they are discriminating the Tibetans from the Chinese. What need is there to bring so many Han Chinese to Tibet? Because they can't trust Tibet. Tibet is not them. You see? So if you really they think that Tibet is part of China, Tibetans are Chinese, then they should treat equally. There's so much discrimination in economical activities, in legal activities, everywhere. Now over 150 Tibetans self-immolated themselves in the past few years, burnt themselves alive out of desperation. But nothing. When one Tibetan self-immolates himself, not only the Chinese will pay any attention, instead they will come after the relatives of those people who are self-immolated, saying that you are all together. Why you did this? Or sometimes they will just concoct the story and they will say, oh, this person self-immolated himself because he was not doing very well with his wife. Instead of paying attention to the problem, that's what the Chinese are doing. So they have no shame at all. But I don't have to say, just study what is happening in Hong Kong under the watchful eyes of the whole of the world, what they are doing there. So I mean, it's not like India. India, we have to pay attention to so many things. But China, they are primarily paying attention to how to take advantage of others. So, I mean, if you will recall what happened in 1962, right after Tibet was captured, right? So that is China. That's China.
I have a vague question in my mind. I had heard in a talk, the talk was on Ramayan, and I heard that Ravan is called an Asura in the Indian tradition. Why? He was a Brahmin, he was a Pandit, he was highly intellectual, he was so learned, so talented. And the speaker said that Asura is not a physical being, it is somebody who is only head, who is only intellect, but no heart. And today's Chinese can be, they are like very intelligent people, they have captured the
very
market.
As a people, very intelligent, I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know. Really, for me, Indians are much more intelligent than Chinese. What do you mean by intelligent? Intelligent doesn't mean that you can make arms and kill people. That means they are stupid, not intelligent. They are not intelligent at all. Intelligent doesn't mean you can learn something. No. Even the computers can, store something. That doesn't mean intelligent. I'm not saying it. It's in the text. If you are able to do something that's good for you now, good for others now, good for you in the long run, good for the others in the long run, that is intelligent. If you pay more attention to removing your self-grasping and egoism and show more, altruistic mind, cherishing the well-being of others, that is called the most intelligent person. So they are not intelligent. Indian leaders like Nagarjuna, Shantideva, they're really, really best of human beings. They're really intelligent. And I really have a big point here to make, because when I see, I'm just a very small, ordinary, uneducated person, but when I see how countries are ruled by different political leaders, I can't, even with this small mind, I can't help but laughing that how stupid these people are. Because they do everything for their name, ahankar, self-glorification. And what they get is, people are not stupid. They don't have the political power, things like that, but they're not stupid. They know how good that person is, how kind that person is, what he has done, what she has done, they know. So in the heart of hearts, they say it's not good leader, you see. Yes, अपना सब उसका होता है चमचागिरी करने वाला, वो लोग तो हमेशा बोलेगा as a good leader. वो तो they don't forget about that. This is how the world is ruled, There's one dictator, not necessarily he's good, but there's a circle, next circle, who also get advantage under their dictatorship. So they also चमचागिरी. इस करके थोड़ा circle बढ़ते, उसका चमचागिरी होता है सबके पास. Only these people will try to defend them because their own power and benefit is in stake. You see, but the majority of people, silent majority, like His Holiness, if I'm not biased, I can give the example of His Holiness the Lam. He's very intelligent. He never ran after power. He's getting so much respect. He never ran after money. Money is coming to him. Just because he's so kind, so nice, people trust, and offer him money, offer him help, get his advice, things like that. And Tibetans were requesting him to continuously remain as the political leader. But 2011, he said, no. Much before that, he said that Tibetans must elect their leader democratically. It's not good to keep the power in the hand of one person, especially in the hand of one religious person. It sends bad signal. You see, that's called intelligent person. Now look at Xi Jinping. I am the biggest. Change the constitution. Is he not going to die? Stupidity is going to die. Very soon he will become infirm. I'm not targeting him. That's the way human beings are. So if you are somebody who realizes all this, and not only that, but also has this, feeling of goodness for the majority of the people, then much before he will just relinquish his political power. And His Holiness did that. How many are there in the world who does this? So they are not intelligent. I'm sorry. I'm not saying Chinese people are not intelligent. I'm not saying the stupid Chinese leaders. Yes, of course, among Chinese also, China has a big civilization. There are many intelligent Chinese also. But whoever they are, really one who is really intelligent means one who serves the best purposes of oneself and others for the long run. That's intelligent.
Swamiji, thank you so much. That was very touching. And it also touched a chord in my heart because my grandparents were also refugees and they left everything behind to leave because they were Hindu. But anyhow, I have two questions for you. For that, I just want to say, negating the Indic wisdom and our deep, profound knowledge continues even today, and the ones who are doing it here in India are orphans of the Communist Party of China. There are many of them in India who continue to do that. But anyhow, my first question is, communism, I believe, is against the law of nature. It's against the law of universe. It captures you as your spirit. It captures your mind. So something which is against the law of nature, wouldn't that come to an end at some point? Wouldn't the universal forces take care of that? So your view from a spiritual Buddhist point of view. The question that I have is, Buddhism also talks about the law of karma.
Yes.
So when will karma catch up with these communists? I wanted your view on that. Thank you.
I don't know much about communism, but interestingly, again, I was probably the first Tibetan, long time before when I was a student. I translated the Karl Marx Communist Manifesto into Tibetan. At that time, there were only 4 Tibetan communists. I was not a communist, but out of my own interest, I used to read the Das Kapital and translated that Communist Manifesto. And one of the Tibetan communists, he saw it and he sent me a letter of great praise, so, oh, wonderful, amazing, things like that. So anyway, what I'm saying is, like, if you really go to the Karl Marx own thinking, especially if you study a little bit of the dialectical materialism, he used a lot of logic, lot of reason. So that's complex. I don't remember everything, but yes, you are right. That's the fundamental Buddhist teaching. Dharma basically means law of nature. Okay, so to do Dharma practice, I'm making it very simple. Okay, there are many other explanations, but I'm making it very simple. So Dharma means law of nature. So practicing Dharma means living in accordance with the law of nature. As simple as that. Okay, so therefore in Buddhism, some of the fundamental teachings are that all the conditioned things are transient, impermanent. That's law of nature. Buddha did not make it. And everything is interdependent, interconnected. That's the law of nature. Nobody can change it. Right? Now, for example, in the case of the every transient thing is, everything that is conditioned is transient, impermanent, including death, So now you keep on saying that I'm not going to die. Okay? Try to go against the law of nature. Okay? You will die. There's not a single person today who never died. So that's why Buddha said, don't go against the nature. Accept that one day you will die. And what is the benefit? The benefit is, if you are somebody who genuinely realizes things that I'm going to die, I'm perishable, okay, then you will be able to understand that my life is short. When I'm going to die, not sure. So while I'm breathing, while I'm alive, I must do something that is good, that is beautiful. And that's why the first teaching that the Buddha gave us on impermanence. है ना, उन्होंने बोला कि शुरू में अगर ये अनित्य के बारे में नहीं बोलने से अब लोग हिलने वाले नहीं है. राइट? अभी हिल रहा है ना, पेंडेमिक से हिल रहे हैं हम लोग सब. नहीं तो नहीं हिलेगा, आदमी नहीं बदलता है. Law of nature, nobody pays attention to law of nature. Impermanence was there long before. Shunyata, emptiness was long before. Dependent origination was long before. It was there in the nature, in the rocks, in the trees, everywhere. It's only Buddha who discovered it. It's there. Look at this. Because people are not looking, therefore they are suffering. So yes, you are absolutely right. It's only a matter of time. But matter of time also doesn't mean that one day, maybe after 200 years, it will. No, not necessary. It may be tomorrow. You may be suffering right now. Externally, you might pretend you are very powerful, Xi Jinping, but he must be almost every day must be remaining under constant, instability, I'm sure. So there's law of karma. He's not enjoying. Externally, yes, he has to act, we are all actors, but internally he may be having a lot of problems. It's 100% sure.
Yes, sir. So I have 2 questions. My first question is, when we study psychology, we see the politics is one of the major interest of many people. So my question is, what is the present situation in China? Means, does anyone thinks of politics there? And my second question about it is about Tibet.
Yeah.
My second question of Tibet. When I see Tibet, there are many of bad things. But does the local Chinese citizens support Tibet issue?
Yeah. So the first question about politics. Politics, as His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, people say politics, dirty politics. But politics by itself is not dirty. It is the politicians who make it dirty. So people misuse it, it becomes dirty. People misuse it, even religion becomes dirty religion. Okay, so politics, whether you call it politics or administration, the actual situations, you need to study what is happening. You need to understand. Even the wrong things, even the good things, whatever is happening, you need to understand and then take steps, the right steps, right? Yes, then among Chinese, because majority of the Chinese are brainwashed by the Chinese government, because in China they have only one, media, more or less. There's the government media, okay. So they are brainwashed. So they have no other sources to listen to. So they believe in it, the Chinese government. And then the Chinese government has been saying much before, Tibetans are backward, Tibetans are barbaric. When they invaded Tibet, in the beginning, they never said that. They said, we are not coming here to rule you forever. We are coming here for a short time to help you. Came like a big brother. But of course, that's what I'm saying. They keep on telling lie, of course. Not only they stayed behind, they robbed everything, destroyed all the monasteries, and looted everything, gold, silver, And now they're excavating all the natural resources. Over 170 something mineral resources are found in Tibet, including uranium and gold. Because of its strong spiritual interest in Tibet, Tibetans said that these natural resources are not only for human beings, they're also for other non-human spirits. And I remember very well, my father used to tell me that there's one particular place where he used to go, and the place was full of gold. You can't believe these things today. You can just see and nobody picks it up, thinking that they will unearth from the local spirit who upkeeps these things. So everything was intact, as if we are preparing this for the Chinese to loot. So now Chinese are excavating everything and taking everything. But the result, of course, flood and all these things will happen. You see, greed. And it's common that the earth also has some kind of richness. If you take out all those richness, very soon you will suffer because of failure of crop and drought and famine, and all these things will happen. And just day before yesterday, I was listening to this news that China is now the biggest producer of greenhouse effect.
Yes.
Much more than the whole
developed
of the
countries.
Much more than the whole of the rest of the world. There's China. Things like that. Okay. But of course, there are some Chinese who, not every Chinese is bad, So there may be a number of people who just have not much idea. They go to Tibet as a tourist and take photos and go back and things like that. And then when they go to Tibet, then they bring some, buy some statues and go back to China. So there are people who are, showing some interest. Yes.
Yeah, because you have been practicing spirituality, you would be aware that all this is a play of consciousness, and what we call God or universe or whatever it is at a very deeper level. Even Buddha pointed out atoms, 5,000 years ago. So
yes.
So my question is two questions, Geshe-ji. If this is a play of consciousness, and consciousness has no color of Tibetan and Chinese, you see, because we are conscious first, then we become human beings, and then we are male and female. At least that is what I believe. So if this is a play of consciousness, why don't we accept that as a play of consciousness rather than showing somebody as a victim and somebody as an aggressor? That is one question, Geshe-ji. And second, related to this. Secondly, I also believe pure consciousness has the capability to manifest Okay, because the universe is a result of this manifestation. And if we human bodies are not the doer, see, we are not the doer, like the Bhagavad Gita says, you are not the doer, so you cannot be the experiencer also. So the human body, like you rightly said, lives and dies on its own. But whatever we are inside, the universe reflects that. So why is it that Tibet, which is so spiritually advanced, is so much abused by everybody and nobody is lifting a word? This question has troubled me for so many years. Because if consciousness is pure, why is consciousness only troubling consciousness? Because both China or Tibet or Indians, we are all pure consciousness.
No, that I need to explain a little bit.
Sorry. This has troubled me for quite some time.
Because the thing is that in Tibetan Buddhism, we don't believe a creator God. Your question is, I think, a little bit related to that. So even when we use the word consciousness, but consciousness means basically mind. Your mind, my mind, you have mind, you have consciousness, I have consciousness, and Chinese have consciousness. But apart from this individual consciousness, we don't believe in a consciousness which is looming large on every individual consciousness. Like the concept of Brahman or concept of God, that concept is not there in Buddhism. Okay? So, whatever happens is a result of human thinking, basically. Human thinking. There's no other, the large, looming large consciousness thinking and doing for us. No. It's your mind, my mind, thinking and doing things. So that's why we talk about individual karma and collective karma. Individual karma, if you kick a dog, it's your individual karma. You did negative karma. If you feed the dog, it's your good individual karma. If two of us together we do something good, it's collective good karma. In that sense. So whatever is happening in today's world is a result of human thinking. Whatever has happened in Tibet is a result of human thinking of the Chinese leaders. The suffering that is happening there due to the negative thinking of Chinese leaders. Right? So therefore, what we are encouraging is that everybody should come with such a positive thinking that nobody unnecessarily suffers, nobody is unnecessarily exploited. But the Chinese leaders have that negative thinking. That's why Tibetans are suffering. Now your pertinent question is, why Tibetans have to suffer? Because they are good people. That's what you are saying. So here there are many factors. Cause and factors. We talk about cause and factor. The cause may be whatever you are experiencing today. Sometimes you are happy. Sometimes you are not happy. The cause may be your past lives, positive karma as well as negative karma. That could also be there. Condition may be your present situation. For example, in the case of Tibetans, the condition was the Chinese mistreatment. And then the long-term cause, maybe Tibetans might have also done something wrong in the past. So that's how we believe. But these things are subtle. You can't just pinpoint, yes, at one particular time, Tibetans did that. Because of that, they are now suffering today. That you can't pinpoint, it is happening over, a long time or short time, whatever, depends, So basically what we are saying is, that general understanding is not difficult. Basically what we are saying is, if this world has to be good, we all need to think good and do good. Simply praying somebody will not solve the problem. You can pray, but the main thing is that you must think good and do good. So that's unfortunately not happening, not only in the whole world, but in the individual cases also. Despite our wanting to do many good things, we fall into the prey of temptations and things like that. And when we, and if you may be suffering from diabetes or something, and doctor told you not to eat too many sweets, but then you will say, oh, one time, no problem, chocolate kha lete hain. So that's the problem, you see.
So I have two questions. One is a very direct political question. So even though, Tibetan community has been there in India for more than 50 years now. Yet you do not find that their cause is being taken up in the mainstream media with the intensity that it might be. For whatever reasons, even though His Holiness the Dalai Lama is internationally famous, that cause or his legitimate issues are not really highlighted in the Indian media. What is the reason for this? This is the first question.
Yeah, the reason is very easy to understand. Because everybody first thinks about themselves. इससे मुझे क्या मिलेगा? तिब्बत को मदद करने से, चीन के साथ फाइट करने से मुझे क्या मिलेगा? That's that number one people think, unfortunately. Not everybody is an altruistic person, you see, sacrificing oneself for others. That's the problem in the world today. Therefore, those people who abide by the truth and nonviolence, still if they are not, militarily or, economically not very powerful, not much interest is shown into them. That's the tragedy of the world. And the consequence will be gradually everybody will suffer. I have given you the example, like now Tibet is gone, India is suffering. There's the example, you see. But then, of course, people, they have every right to first think about their country. So therefore, there's the problem, but whenever their own, right is in stake, like for example, very recently during the pandemic, more people are, not only India, but in the rest of the world also, more people are now talking and supporting Tibet, you see. Now that the Biden administration, just yesterday, 2 of the congressmen even suggested that now we should stop mentioning Tibet as a part of China, you see. And Biden administration is also, declared his support and things like that. So I'm not saying this is not good, but I'm saying, why these things have not happened earlier, you see. So Tibet becomes a tash ka pata, Yahan rakho, jab bhi zarurat hai phir usko phengo. So unfortunately, there's this. There's playing the card, you see. But I understand that. I'm not seeing it completely from negative, even whatever is coming, it's good. It's good. But then for the long-term benefit of any country, they must be honest and truthful. If that is there, then the democratic system, which is now gradually eroding in many countries, they will be able to maintain all this good things of the democracy and things like that. But if they play publicity, it will not go very far.
So the thing is, this is a question regarding your opinion of the neo-Buddhist movement within India, led by Ambedkarites and so on.
Yeah.
So in that discourse, you find that Buddhism is positioned as the solution for Hinduism's problems. I mean, what is your opinion as a practicing Buddhist and coming from a long history of Buddhism? What is your opinion on this kind of movement?
Now, Ambedkar died just a few days after he became Buddhist. Right? But of course, he's an intelligent man. He's one of the founding fathers of the Indian, Constitution. He was a great, revolutionary and intelligent person. So many people fed up with the prevailing situation at that time, the Brahman kind of treatment with them, whatever, I'm not saying it's in the history, okay? So because of that, they all joined this new movement. They call it New Buddhism. So I know a number of them, although we belong to kind of little bit different kind of tradition, but I met a number of those people, and the many good people are there. And but I think it is more related to the prevailing social condition at that time, not so much about the religion, itself. Okay, but yes, if they study Buddhism properly, the profound Buddhist teaching, then of course you can find a solution for wherever there is a solution. You can find the solution. But if you don't just simply, don't study properly and simply use all these different religions as a tool to claim for your, right, then it will not go very far.
So my question is, one question was already asked by Ramakrishna ji, like whether India has actually failed its civilizational responsibility towards Tibet. And so I had another question also.
Yeah.
This false idealism.
Yeah.
And this concept of non-violence being taken too far, is it actually becoming a hindrance for people to act and do what is right?
This is a very important question, but it depends upon how well you understand the meaning of non-violence. Okay, non-violence is not just absence of violence. Non-violence is active practice of compassion. If non-violence is just absence of non-violence, then we can say the table is also practicing non-violence because it's not doing any violence. We can't say the table and chair, they are practicing non-violence. Okay, so therefore non-violence is much more than absence of violence. Non-violence means active practice of compassion. So active practice of compassion means there is a dynamic, it's a dynamic force. So if you have, now compassion means this wish to remove sufferings of all sentient beings. And if you have that kind of really thinking, you can't just stay there as a, onlooker. Okay, you need to go into the thick of problems and solve as much as possible. So it has to be active. So non-violence is really, many people misunderstood non-violence. For example, you take the example of Gandhi.
Yes,
he was a non-violence, but he was not just remaining there as a silent spectator. He went into jail, so many times, and suffered so much, and then contributed much to the independence. Yeah.
But my question is also that, like, if you are speaking a language, there's only use talking if the other person understands that language of compassion, right? So won't violence become necessary in certain situations?
No, unfortunately, no. Don't use the word violence. Use the word toughness. Toughness is yes. With compassion, with love, you need to be tough. Okay, stand tall, but not violence. Because if you do violence, the result, the reaction also will be violence. Then it will be a never-ending cycle of killing each other. And in fact, if you're somebody who really understands the meaning of non-violence, then non-violence has to be specially practiced at the time when there is violence. It's like medicine. You take medicine when you're sick, not when you're healthy. So violence and killing and shooting, these are signs of sickness, human mental sickness. So during that time, you need to be there, to settle that violence. Bring calmness in the mind of the people.
Geshe-la, since we are talking about
and then,
violence,
then how much you are able to do that is very much dependent upon your, absence or presence of loving kindness. For example, even if your parents are sometimes very tough and scolding you, sometimes even slap you a little bit, will you be violent? Most of the cases, some people of course do, but most of the cases no, because you have love, you have affection. But for other people, we immediately flare out and try to be violent because clear indication we have no concern, no love for them. And in this world, without love, nothing can survive. I can promise that. Nothing can flourish. Trees and plants also, they can't flourish with violence. No. If you act like a storm.
Since we are talking about violence and non-violence, we have another 3-4 questions, and one is from me. Yeah. Talking about violence, it reminds me of the case of the monk who died about 2 years ago, Palden Gyatso, the one who was tortured in the Chinese camp.
Yes.
Even after, for the audience, I may tell you, he was arrested umpteen times, and even after he finished his term, he was rearrested or maybe sent to the labor camp, where they, how do they torture the Tibetans? How do they treat them? They are beaten, treated like a plow animal. Their electric cattle rods are used on them, self-tightening handcuffs, self-tightening thumb screws, all sorts of instruments. Some of the instruments this monk carried back to India when he escaped. And then to think that almost 18%, 20% of Chinese at least are Buddhist, some are Taoists. Even the Han Chinese have religions, where does their Buddhism come from, or where does it go if they can conceive of such torture things? Buddhism is all compassion.
No. What Buddhism teaches and what you practice is not always different, you know. That is not only with the Chinese, but other people also. For example, if you're Hindu, for example, are you sure that you will be able to practice all the Hindu, the important teachings of Hinduism or Buddhism? No, that's human failing. And especially if you're an ordinary person under such a situation of the totalitarian system, then you will toe their line. So there's not much opportunity for them. But the fact is, the important thing that I want to tell you is that the benefit of nonviolence, for example, you mentioned Pandit Gyatso, and I know another monk from Namgyal Monastery, and His Holiness knew him when he was in Tibet. Then when His Holiness left, he could not come. So he remained in Tibet, and he was in prison, I think 17, 18 years or something like that, many years. So then finally he managed to come to India. I met him, and I also, I was then working in His Holiness office. I also went few times with him to interpret, to take him to the hospital and things like that. So he is really a crooked, bent back and very elderly. So one day His Holiness asked him to come. So he came to see His Holiness, and His Holiness, among other things, he asked the question, since you have been in Chinese prison for many years, in some of these years, you might have really had difficulty. Have you? Then he said, yes, on few occasions, I really had a big problem. Then His Holiness thought must be the problem of his life. Then he said, is the problem of your life? He said, no, not my life. Then what? Problem of the fear of forgetting compassion for the Chinese torturers. Imagine. Because during all these years in the Chinese prison, instead of worrying about himself, he was more worried about the torturers, because they're doing such a negative karma. They will have to bear the consequences of negative karma. So he was more worried about this inhuman treatment and the negative consequences of their inhuman treatment. Can you imagine? The important thing is, with the benefit of such compassionate mind is not only him. Many Tibetans who remained in Chinese prison for many years and suffered a lot of torture. Then after they escaped and came to Tibet, and many foreign and other medias interviewed them, and they were kind of surprised. They can't believe their eyes that this person has been in the Chinese prison for so many years and suffered so much torture. By seeing the resilience of these people, the resilience came from the mental attitude of practice of love, practice of compassion, practice of tolerance, and also doing their religious practices as much as possible. You see, I was once reading a book on the sufferings that happened in the German concentration camp. So there is a story of one gentleman who said that the only quality that made him survive during this great torture was love for his family. You see? So that's not only good for other people, it's really good for you.
So my question is that nowadays we see that the Chinese are using some indirect methods to, gain their authority over Tibet, like through education means also they are doing this. So now naming your monasteries, the Tibetan monasteries as say the fountainheads of blind faith. And then I remember in 1990s, the Chinese took around 1/3 of the secondary school Tibetan population to China to give them Chinese education. So these types of techniques are being played by the Chinese. So at the ground level, do you think there is some influence over young Tibetans that are they falling prey to the communist ideology or say the Maoism and everything?
In the long run, of course, they will be influenced, because especially now, for example, children are taught Chinese and discourage learning Tibetan. Okay, So wherever they go for business, economical activities, or meeting other people, they have to speak Mandarin or Chinese. So naturally, because of this process, you will not be able to, study your language properly. And many may not study it because there's not much benefit for economical, jobs and things like that. You see, you can't expect every Tibetan like farsighted and intelligent, and the majority of the people will be concerned about their day-to-day, life's activities. So if they are able to get their job and earn some money, then they will focus more on that. You see. So there is, of course, huge danger. But as you rightly mentioned, some of the first batches of Tibetans, much before when with this aim, they sent to the Chinese university and things like that. The Chinese government could not succeed. They all become like more nationalistic because people are not always stupid, In terms of education and many other facilities, of course, they will suffer. But in terms of being a Tibetan, you call it nationalism, whatever, that will be taught by their relatives, by their parents. They will see how they are treated as a second-class citizen, things like that, So naturally, you feel hard, you see. So these people will fight back. So as and when there is an opportunity, they will all fight. But right now, the atmosphere is such that there's no possibility. No possibility, because everything is censored. Not only for the Tibetans, the Chinese themselves, they're under such a heavy, machine survey that just when you come into the spotlight of the camera, all the details will come out from this person, Name, then the job, then the security, the family background. They have basically like each and every people are under their thumb. So you can't move. There's the situation. Yeah.
It was really an experience listening to my old friend Lagdorla.
Yeah.
I have been, because I am a journalist and everybody knows I am more a political animal rather than spiritual. Hardly
spiritual animal, yeah.
Spiritual leanings, very little because of what I'm practicing, my profession and the subject I deal with from the angle of how China is treating Tibet or the Chinese role in Asia or vis-a-vis India. So I must somewhere to my friends, the other audience, I wanted to point out that this is first time I'm listening. I have listened to one of the most political commentaries today, but from a spiritual angle. This was unique, and the credit goes to Lagdorla. You have presented a very, very political issue without even mincing words. But the way you have explained as a spiritual master, that makes it much more effective. And for me, it was one of those very rare experiences when I'm sitting and listening on Tibet on a political issue, but from a very different perspective. So the way you explained how the Chinese mind is working and why the problem, because of the Chinese way of thinking, the Chinese mind's thinking, the political leadership's thinking, the Communist Party's thinking, or the weakness of the Chinese or leaders like Xi Jinping, that they don't have dignity and no decency in their what they are doing. All these things, and especially the way you underlined, you didn't find a mistake with the Indian government, as many of our friends do find mistakes. India is not doing this, India is not doing that for Tibet. But the way you have explained that the importance of understanding why India, or you didn't use the word government of India, but I appreciate the way you said that there is a very deep need of understanding Tibet, or understanding what has happened to Tibet. It has to be understood by India, by the government of India, by people of India. That will help us in dealing with the Chinese in a more effective way. Later you use the word about the difference between violence and non-violence and the concept of compassion. Maybe will be more effective if we could understand that. And you have underlined today this idea of how the Tibetans, as a very small refugee community, a microscopic community of, I say that only 150,000 people, and just 100,000 living in India, and out of that, very few people are in an age group or in a situation to contribute. The way Tibetan community has contributed is contributing back to India in the way of bringing back the knowledge which was lost over the centuries. I admire that, and I think sitting through your presentation today, it was a wonderful treat. And just wanted to say thanks to you. I have no questions to ask you.
One question from Sangeeta Sharda. My pranam to you, Geshe Lakdor. India and Indians stand strongly with the cause of Tibet. What surprises me is when will the people of China rise against its authoritarian regime even after being educated? And number two, do you have any advice for the Indian pseudo-liberals, that is the Indian Marxists?
I am not in a capacity to advise anybody, but anything that is pseudo will not work very long. Pseudo is pseudo. Pretension never works. As I said in my talk, if you pretend you're intelligent, you will not become intelligent. If you pretend you are powerful but doing the wrong things, you will never become powerful. You will get power, you will get recognition only when you truly, truly be honest and sincere and dedicate your life for the well-being of everybody. Then you are intelligent, then power will come to you. Power will come to you. There are people who say, I don't want this power. But there are people who say, please, 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 please lead us. And then there are people who want power. They use army, military. Look at what is happening in Burma right now. I want power. I want power. Kill the people. How many have killed? Still people are not letting them rest in peace. There's the difference. There's the difference. If you really be honest and sincere, of course you can't please everybody, as I said, but the majority of the people will respect you, follow you. Okay. So pseudo, whatever pseudo it is, will not work.
This is regarding what you said about non-violence.
Yeah.
Would I be correct if I understood this as being something on these lines, that non-violence is a good personal ideal, but it may not be very practical as an instrument of state policy? Would I be correct in understanding your ideas that way?
Yeah, that I don't agree with you, but yes, I understand your point, because people want to see concrete result in a short time, right? For example, if you be violent and throw somebody down, a dictator or something, then of course it looks like it's working, you see. But if you be non-violent, and then it doesn't look like working. So there's the problem. There's the problem. But in the long run, violence, as I'm saying, violence is never be the solution. But what we need, but I fully kind of not only support you, but I'm fully with you, because I also have been thinking about this for a long time. You see, so that's why I've started saying, be non-violent and also tough. I never said be violent. I said be non-violent but tough. That means you need to stand firm with all the whatever resources you can pull through, preparations, everything that you do. There's one solution, but the long-term solution is not even that one. The long-term solution is educate the masses much in advance, especially the younger generations. Education is the key. If you're able to educate the younger generation, then there's no question of a leader coming up with authoritarian style, you see. It will not come up. Right now, the problem is from the society, such people are coming up. Then what we have all been saying is all these leaders, once they become leader, then they have the army under their command. So anybody tries to say something against them, they immediately send the army and the tanks to kill them. So that is the problem. So we need to come up with a long-term strategy and also short-term strategy. Like, for example, now what I'm saying is, for example, I mean, in a relatively peaceful way, it is easy to say that you should be a little bit violent, to get what you want. But imagine now in China, for the Tibetans, for example, or even the Chinese citizens, if we become violent, they can easily crush us. It's not that easy in an atmosphere like that, because the Chinese government has, deprived the knives or the weapons, anything from the ordinary people. So they have nothing to fight with. So it's really like, if you become violent, it's really like committing suicide, So instead of that, through nonviolence means, as human beings, we can always, there's a possibility of finding, method and means to look for the solution. But it's not easy. I understand your point. It's a little bit complex. Yeah. Because the leaders, like the Chinese leaders, they don't have, as I said, they don't have that ear. Kan nahi unke paas, sunda nahi kisi ka. There's the problem, how to deal with such dictators, you see. So then people feel for such dictators, the only way is to use gun. So this we need to think strategically. Yeah. Sometimes I give one example. For example, the need to use violence, because many people are using violence and achieving something. Therefore, we must use violence. It's really saying something like, many people are jumping from the 3rd floor and committing suicide. So I should also jump from the 3rd floor and committing suicide. So for me, it looks a little bit like that, but it's complex. We need to think, yeah. But if you think about the human nature itself, then, you can easily find out human nature by itself is non-violence. Look at teeth. It's not for killing other animals. Look at the nails. It is not for killing other animals. And this long hand is for hugging, not for hitting. Right? So all this shows we are by nature non-violent. Once His Holiness was giving a talk in a Brahma Kumari, in Varanasi. So I was, as a translator, sitting next to him on the chair. So he was explaining this, and he said, look at these nice fingers and long arms. It's for hugging, not for hitting. And then he hit me, actually. I nearly fell from the chair. I fell down from the chair. Yeah, right. So, but then it's human great intelligence that we make all the weapons to kill and destroy others and things like that. But given the human nature itself, we cannot be violent.
It was related to the non-violence question.
Yeah.
Actually, I mean, what you say is very convincing. That if the Tibetans were to pick up arms, then they would be very easily quashed, etc.
Yes.
But then, how would you propose that you will get your nation back, that you will get your land back without picking arms, without at least somebody, if not you, maybe the Indian army, but finally somebody will have to create that violence to bring justice to the people of Tibet. And then what would be your comments regarding the monk in Myanmar who cleansed his country of the violent elements that were there in his country?
Yeah, as I already said, this is a difficult issue. But you are just giving one example. You did not give the example of Mahatma Gandhi. How did he got Indian independence? Through violence? Or are you saying that you got independence only through Subhash Chandra Bose, not Gandhi?
Actually, I would say that, yes.
So there are things to think about, it's not just one thing, many things come together, many things. So this is based on the Buddhist teaching. Nothing comes good or bad, nothing comes from one cause, one condition. Everything comes from multiplicity of causes and conditions. So toughness, non-violence, dialogue, and then the changes that takes place in the country itself. Many things come together. Many things come together.